Welcome, everyone, to the Pro Football Doc YouTube network. I'm Thomas Casale, joined by Pro Football Doc David Chao. Well, Doc, it's Friday. Fantasy owners are on the edge of their seats, and the one guy they're talking about most, Alvin Kamara. It was interesting, Doc. We didn't really see much during the game with Kamara. Then news came out after about a potential injury. You went back and looked at the video. Tell us what you've seen with Kamara and if you believe he will play on Sunday for the Saints.
Well, first of all, we always talk about how return to play is multifactorial, right? There's the medical side, there's the player side, and there's the team side. Here we concentrate on the medical side and try and explain the team and the player side. On the medical side, he can play. We went back and looked at the video. It was right at the start of the second half. And as you can see here, he goes in the pile, gets fallen on his left leg. Not a clear shot. That's either an MCL or a high ankle. It turns out to be an MCL mild. He goes into the tent briefly, but he finishes the rest of the game, and his numbers are actually pretty good. But if you break it down, it's how he runs in the second half that's altered a little bit. And Thomas, what do we always say? Judge the injury, not the reaction to the injury. So the reaction to the injury has everyone in a panic. 2 straight DNPs. I get it. There is concern. But the reality is, if you look at the injury and the fact that he finished the game, he is able to play, but in maybe a modified fashion, and we can get into that. And I get the beat reporters, some of them have been pessimistic, etc. But you have to understand, Thomas, that MCL is not one that all of a sudden gets worse as days go on and overnight swelling. The MCL, when it happens, the instability, if there is any, happens immediately. And swelling isn't the big factor. So the fact that he finished the game, but I do think he played it differently, bodes cautiously well that he could be available, but not 100%.
Okay, and Doc, one of the things, I always try to listen to the things that you say and the insider knowledge you have. And when we discussed the AFC Championship game with the Chargers when you were there against the Patriots and LT, and you mentioned that it was pain tolerance. Could this be another example of pain tolerance?
Yes, pain tolerance, but it's also, I think, an example of usage. And look, will Kamara have his normal touches and normal play? I don't think so. But the Saints, first of all, need offensive weapons. They need someone for Trevor Siemian to throw the ball to and otherwise. And there's no question Mark Ingram will probably have increased usage. But if you look at how he was used in the second half, it may mimic how he's used this week against Tennessee if he plays. The way that he ran the ball with his left knee, he was really good north-south. He wasn't as good east-west, and he didn't do a lot of dancing. And his yardage, yeah, he got a nice run called back, but it was one where the one plant cut was on the healthy right knee. He still got a lot of speed, but cutting off the left knee not as effectively. But I expect him to be used more in space as a pass-catching weapon. Less worry about re-aggravation. He has to take another hit to re-aggravate it, okay? So it's not like the Dak muscle calf where just one misstep in anything you do and all of a sudden he's re-aggravated. He has to take this hit. And historically, the Saints and Sean Payton have been among the best at customized utilization. I mean, let's look at Taysom Hill, for example, and how they utilize him, special packages and things. This is Alvin Kamara. This is their best weapon. I think he's still possible to play, but they'll use him more in space rather than running up into the line. It'll be Ingram running up into the line and Kamara in space. And we have to watch the practice reports. I mean, either today he's logging an LP or DNP. I don't think that changes the equation. It's not like LP for sure he's playing or DNP for sure he's not, because it's Alvin Kamara. He doesn't need to practice to play. He knows what's happening in the audience, in the offense and everything else. And I just think Peyton and the offensive minds at the Saints have shown the ability to alter the plan. And I think they potentially still will. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, right now the Saints 2.5-point underdogs to the Tennessee Titans. Make sure, go to profootballdoc.com. We have the 6 scores up. Surprisingly, Doc, we have the Saints with the advantage, even with the Kamara injury, because we go through all the positions, and the Titans, as a team, have more injuries than the Saints, big-name injuries. So that's why I always tell people, you want to look at all the positions. We got all the 6 scores up at profootballdoc.com, and make sure you hit subscribe to hit all our videos, right, Doc?
And so if you look, pop up the field view here, you can see the positions, and it's interactive, and you can hover on it and see both sides and make your own decisions. Look, we're not touts. I'm not a tout. I mean, look, you're a gambling guy. I'm a medical guy. Like in last night's game against with the Dolphins and the Ravens, by name brand value, it's Lamar Jackson. It's by record, it's the Baltimore Ravens. But if you look at yesterday's thing, we said, look, where's the advantage here? The advantage is for the healthier Dolphins defense versus the banged up Ravens offense. And that ultimately played out. Doesn't always play out, right? I mean, the ball's not round, but it's more the hidden injuries. We're not worried about the quarterback or the star, this, that, the other. It's the injuries the public might not know. Now, you could really study it and know it, but it'd take you a lot of time. But we try and gather it for you, but then also give you the interpretation on the injuries and then factor it into your decision making. We're not trying to tout you what to do, but obviously, the Dolphins, and obviously we're getting 7.5 points. That's why I was like, if the defense works out like it's supposed to, and yeah, there's scheme, and you can say they played Lamar differently, and so not saying injuries are the only thing, but it is a factor.
Well, another team, Doc, where injuries are a factor, the Arizona Cardinals. Apparently they weren't too big of a factor last week against the 49ers. No Kyler Murray, no DeAndre Hopkins. Running back Chase Edmonds gets hurt early in the game, and they still won that game easily. Right now, Cardinals 10.5-point favorites over the struggling Panthers. What are you seeing in Arizona with Murray and Hopkins?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a big 3 there, really, right? Murray, Hopkins, and Edmonds. And if you want to put it in order of most likely to play to least, I think it's Kyler, then Hopkins, then Edmonds. Edmonds has a high ankle sprain that he didn't finish the game with. At running back position, I think it's unlikely. Hopkins, is still coming off the hamstring. He got 1 week of rest. Is it enough? And even if he plays, if you look at our 6 scores, we're not going to put him super high. Just like last night, Sammy Watkins played with his hamstring, but he had a low 6 score. He didn't do a lot in the game, even though he was active. And Hopkins may do more than Watkins if he plays, but still not necessarily a lot. And then it comes to the question of Kyler Murray. Once again, I believe Kyler Murray can play. You have to judge the injury, not the reaction to the injury. His foot wasn't planted when he had that eversion sprain. Yes, he's sore. I believe he can still play very effectively as a pocket quarterback. The question is how mobile. And look, if they have a lot of confidence with Colt McCoy against the Panthers, but I don't love looking past teams. But, if they're looking ahead to the Seahawks to make sure they maintain that NFC West advantage over them, maybe they rest Kyler. But once again, now that gets into coaching decision and team decision. Medically, I think he can be an effective quarterback in play. And, as good as Colt McCoy may be, the difference in Kyler and Colt is still there. So I still lean towards that he can and will play. But I'm not inside the minds of the Arizona Cardinals team in terms of what they're saying.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Doc, you thought he was healthy enough to play last week, but they decided to hold him off. And again, while Colt McCoy might be a downgrade, as we mentioned last week on the show, Colt McCoy's a pretty good NFL backup, right? And he showed that last week by leading them to win over the 49ers. So it'll be interesting because, as you mentioned, they have the Seahawks coming up. The Panthers really struggling. No Sam Darnold this week. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in Arizona.
Yeah, but you got to be careful there. You look past them. They maybe no Sam Darnold, but they have Christian McCaffrey, right? And I'm not worried about Christian McCaffrey in terms of re-injury versus anyone else at this point in time. But the other point on Kyler is, once again, let's not overreact to the reaction to the injury, which is the DNPs, right? A great example of that was once again last night's game. I think the world in the beginning, and I saw some pundits saying, "Oh my God, his season's over," and ACL and other things, and we were like, "Well, the injury itself to Jacoby Brissett, we didn't really see a lot on video." Now, but he went down screaming, clutching his knee. Obviously, that's the reaction to the injury. And I'm not saying Jacoby's overreacting. He was scared. It certainly hurt. But that was a hurt, not injured. And he could have returned to the game, right? And so that's kind of what we try and focus on, is the video of the injury is the most honest assessment. Judging the reaction is sometimes, it definitely can mislead you.
All right, well, Kamara, Kyler Murray, two of the biggest guys this week, but we'll have all the 6 scores, all the information. Make sure to go to profootballdoc.com, hit subscribe to see all our videos, and follow us at profootballdoc on Twitter. Doc, we'll keep pumping out the 6 scores and the latest injury information. Enjoy the games this week.
Thank you.